Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. It is the start of conference play coming up this Saturday. Sorry, I was a couple seconds late. I was over there posting on the Maize and Blue Review the topic, what do we think of Bryce Underwood? And I thought with my well-thought, put-together post that everybody could be just liking what I had to say about Underwood coming into his own and a seismic shift in the identity of the Michigan football program. But no, there was a little bit of pushback on that idea. And hey, it was pretty good reps for me because that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Michigan football and, oh yeah, a little bit of basketball. The game coming up on Saturday afternoon in Lincoln has everyone's attention. Are they the team that we saw in the two home games, or are they the team that you saw down in Oklahoma, somewhere in the middle? Will that be good enough against the Cornhuskers? Something that is on everyone's mind, and we'll talk about it coming up. Dusty, I saw him on Saturday up on the big screen, standing around with a few players and a few recruits, and Dusty was able to pull one of those recruits in, and now Michigan for the 2026 class already has two prized players strongly committed, and we'll talk about that player coming up in this broadcast. But to me, the big thing is the non-conference and what was the big story when it came to the non-conference season for Michigan. How would you answer that? I'll answer it this way. Michigan found out what kind of team they have and what it's going to take to win. And what it's going to take to win is going to be a departure of what they have done for the past 4 years. And they had a lot of success these last 4 years, except last year and except this in their first road game. And that was, punching the other team in the mouth, playing very physical, and the ground and pound approach, smash, if you will. And what they have done philosophically, it is a shift to, sure, they would like to be a ground and pound team, and if available, they will do it, but it doesn't look like they can because of their offensive line. They are shifting to where most teams in college football are, and that is playing to the strength of your quarterback. And if you have a quarterback that is better than everyone else, it really pays off in spades. You can see that at every level. Michigan, even though they had that type of quarterback with JJ, we can all agree it wasn't JJ and everyone else when Michigan won in 23 and they were going to the college football with JJ in 22 and winning all their ball games. It was the philosophy of lining up and smashing the football and controlling the clock and toughness. All things that people love. They love it because it was winning. They didn't love it actually at first because it's like, you can't win this way. They're going to have to throw it. And then Harbaugh was like, just watch me. And everybody was like, whoa, Harbaugh's great. Because it was and he is. And it was successful. But now I'll give Michigan credit. I know there's a lot of people, and, I don't want to say it's real easy, the low-hanging fruit, or let's rip Sharon for the game at Oklahoma. Let's jump on Lindsey. Let's, have a story about Ward Manuel. Let's bitch about, or say that the boosters will be unhappy with the loss because how Underwood, all of that stuff. And, there's a point to it because Michigan looked so pedestrian against Oklahoma. But to me, what came out of that and what you saw last week, and I know it was just Central Michigan. That's going to be your argument if you're like, this guy's not making any sense. It was just Central. But what happened was Michigan realized that the old ways, the last 4 years, was not going to be the path to the playoffs and the future with Bryce Underwood. The future is now, and they said, hey, this is your team. Here are the keys. There's no more training wheels. You have the green light to do whatever you want. We are playing through you. And that's huge for Michigan. That's, Michigan, and it's a team game. You're going to have all the other components coming along. But just that shift, I felt it. I mean, I don't know if you had to be there. I don't think so. I think you could have seen it just by watching it on TV. And to me, it's obvious. But, it's hard for people to change their opinion or look at things a different way when they have a strong feeling that, no, this is what cost Michigan. This is what Michigan football is. I know what Michigan football is. All right, maybe you do. And so I'm just giving you what I think and what I know and what I see. And you're welcome to look at it and say, oh, no, you're buying what they're selling. Oh, no, don't try to fool me. I'm not trying to fool anyone. I think Michigan has moved from smash to Bryce Underwood as being the most important piece. Now, you can say we're nitpicking because they really do need Justice Haynes and the running game and the offensive line, or they're not going to do anything, and the quarterback. So maybe we're just arguing, just to argue or throwing stuff out there, to kill time before they kick off on Saturday. But, philosophies and identity and culture, these words, when you do make the switch, to me, that is a pretty big deal for a program like Michigan. And what I've seen is that they're doing it. And I think it's smart. Play to your strengths. Make your number one option the number one option. And the number one option was not Bryce Underwood at Oklahoma. Now, don't get it wrong. I don't think that Michigan would have won if they would have gone down to Oklahoma and said, Bryce, it's your world. Let's just roll with you. They got their ass kicked on up front on their offensive line. And, when Bryce was asked to throw it, he looked like a freshman. I think that he learned a lot. I'm expecting him to be a lot better, not just because he has the freedom to do whatever he wants, but he will have had that experience. You have to have that. People didn't like hearing that when I said that going up to the Oklahoma game. People still don't like hearing that. Oh, the road's tough. But I think he's going to be a lot better there. And their top plays or their idea on how to win at Oklahoma was, we are going to do what we have done to win those 3 Big Ten championships and win the national championship, and that is dominate up front and dominate with our ground attack. That is number one. That is number 2. That's the game plan. That's how we're going to do it. And I can't really fault them for having that approach. It worked. You take last year and you say, we really screwed it up with the quarterback. So you throw that year out. But the 3 previous years, that's the blueprint. That's Michigan football. And then, they had an 18-year-old quarterback making his first road start. Let's not just put everything on him. To me, it was very reasonable. I didn't even say it was smart, a game plan. It was one that I would have signed off on. Now, nobody else, after watching it, of course, you're not going to sign off on it after you watched it. But, maybe you wanted to, throw every down and, Sharon doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I mean, so all those things are fair when you lose. I mean, it's hard to take losing. And I'm over here saying, take it. It sucks. The Oklahoma game will always be a reminder. But I think the Oklahoma game is a reminder that Michigan had their, I don't even want to call it the old way, their way of winning football games. And then they had their newfangled superstar quarterback. And when was that transition going to happen? Well, it's happened. It happened last week. Now, look, I didn't think it would happen last week. I would not have run. I don't like Bryce Underwood taking unnecessary hits, and I thought he took a few. against CMU. I would have sprung him this week. But, they weren't asking me for my opinion on that. So I'm not sitting back and saying, oh, boy, these guys are just, they're dialing everything up perfect. They've got it. But I will give them credit for making the change. And when it's Michigan, all throughout the years, when you're one of the top dogs, everybody always wants change this, change, and fans especially, they want things to change a lot faster, almost always a lot faster, and everything. Bench this guy, fire this guy, throw money at this, all of these things. And Michigan, kind of moves slowly, calculated, because they're evaluating how things are going along the way. And I don't give them a free pass against Oklahoma. They deserve some criticism that, they worked all off season to get this game plan ready, and, they fell on their face. But how you respond to losses, how you respond to the negativity, how you respond to your team not coming together the way you thought is a really big deal. And how they've rebounded since the Oklahoma game is, to me, a big deal. Now, look, that's what I think. I think they have passed the torch. And the torch was in the hands of Michigan is a ground and pound team that is physically going to beat you up, and that's how they're going to win football games too. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country, one of the best playmakers in the country, and that's how they're going to win ball games now. That's the torch being passed. Now, you may like it. You may say, yes, that's what they needed to do. That's where I'm at. I think they needed to do that. They had to see it. It was understandable how they went about it. But now where they are at, and with the torch being passed, you say, what about the Ohio State game? What about everything? They want to win now, and they want to be the best team that they can now. If they would have gone to Oklahoma and they would have been able to impose their will on the offensive line and tenderize the Sooner defensive line, where they got into the second half and the creases were there and they wore them down and they started to run the football, things would be different. But that's not what happened. And they made a choice to take the training wheels off, to let Underwood be the guy for this team. And so instead of the approach of looking at it and saying, Michigan's, it's all about running the ball 40, 50 times, tenderizing it and taking over. That's Michigan. No, now it's get the ball in Underwood's hands and let him throw, let him buy time with his legs, let him move around in the pocket, let him be creative at the line of scrimmage, and if he feels it, let him take off. Those are, I'd say you could come up and say those are only two things: let him run, let him throw. But no, the part where he can move in the pocket, buy some extra time, throw off platform, all of these different things, and create positive yardage with his legs. It's nothing against Justice Haynes. He's shown explosiveness. He's going to be a big part of this team. Underwood's a more dangerous runner. Obviously, Underwood's a dangerous passer. And that combination, I watched the Ravens just like everyone else. And last year, people are going to be like, they're just going to give it to King Henry all the time with Lamar. How's that going to work? Well, you know how it's worked? It works in that Lamar puts the ball on King Henry, and the teams have to look at it and say, we're going to pick our poison. And they have to commit everybody to King Henry. And if they don't, he goes and takes off. If they do, sometimes Lamar keeps it, and then he takes off. It's really difficult to defend. Now, you've got maybe he is one of the great quarterbacks in modern football history. I'd say one of the great quarterbacks of all time, in Lamar Jackson. Yeah, he's got to prove it in the postseason for sure. but I'd take him on my team every time. And Henry's game speaks for itself. He's one of the great running backs of all time. So you got two greats, and that helps. It's going to help everyone on that team. The offensive line, when Underwood can get away from guys, and now he's got the freedom, and now he can take off. It affects the defense, how they're looking at how they are going to stop Michigan. Oh, yeah, we've heard this before. Great players. One of the earmarks of a great player is that he makes all the players around him better. So that's where I'm sitting with the passing of the torch. And just one more thing on this before we go to the game coming up on Saturday. You look for greatness. That's why when Michigan was able to land a flip Underwood, everybody got so, went crazy because of all the ideas of, what could, he could do for the football program. And then we saw, you're looking for these splash plays or flashes of greatness. And we saw it in the opener. We didn't see much at all down there at OU. And then, of course, he looked, as good as you possibly could as a dual threat quarterback against CMU. But what it looks like in just the 3 games is that Underwood, the game has slowed down so much, and yet he has continued to keep his wits about him and his speed. He looks, even though it's probably he's the boy playing with men, it looks like he now is the man playing with boys. That's at times what it looks like. And I do have to understand, because I know people are like, it was CMU. Tap the brakes. I get the tap the brakes. It was CMU. I get tap the brakes. It was New Mexico. And hey, what happened when they had to go on the road? Let's see it before I believe it, or let's actually see it Saturday. That's all fair. That's totally fair. If you have to, but I have the feeling that that the game has slowed down for Underwood, and that he is their best option on the team. He's their best player on the team. He's the best player in the Big Ten. He's one of the best players in the country. He's a dangerous playmaker, one of the most dangerous playmakers at the most important position in all the country. That's a big deal. And you get one of those guys, they're worth their weight in gold, and it could mean everything for Michigan as soon as this year and starting on Saturday if it already hasn't started. So that's where I'm sitting when it comes down to it. You have any thoughts on passing the torch, shifting the identity from Michigan football? Riley says he prays to God Sharon lets Chip call the offense when he gets back. Well, I got news for you on Sharon Moore. Sharon was the one that it wasn't, Sharon took off to Timbuktu and Biff said, let's go crazy because Sharon ain't around. It's always a married up. You get all of the credit and all of the blame when you're the head coach. Sharon put the game plan in. He has put it in for Nebraska. So this part about, Sharon is going to put handcuffs on Chip Lindsey and come. I think that it's an understandable approach by fans as they're thinking that, Sharon ran the ball 30 times. I saw somebody criticizing Sharon for running the ball just last week, for running the ball so much against Penn State, a game that they won, a game that they didn't have their head coach, and a game that they won and went on to win the national championship. I don't mind people criticizing the coach. A lot of times it's deserved. And, he deserves criticism for their approach and their game plan because it was terrible. It didn't work. I mean, I understood it, but it didn't work. So I'm going to sit around telling everybody it was a good game plan because it didn't work. But criticizing Michigan when they won the national championship, And that they ran the ball so much against Penn State, I couldn't see that. But it's everybody's got their thing. If you don't win, everybody's mad. But if you win, you want to win and be entertained. If you want to win, you want to win the way you want to win. There's always something. Can you win and win the way you want them to win, and you be, completely happy with it? I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. Sam is in agreement with Riley. Keep Sharon away. Maybe they should just keep him away. Worried about it. Cut from a different cloth thinks Underwood would be just fine. He's still learning how to read college defenses and offensive line protections. Totally faster and different during live games. It's true, and yet I think that for the 3 games, whether you're going to say it's clicked in or that he's just getting better every game, it's enough for Michigan to look at what they were doing and shift it and say, we are totally going all in with him. And it's the right move. So that's what I see when it comes down to Michigan as it sits here right now. We go to the game coming up on Saturday. Michigan is ranked 20 and 21st in the polls. And it is going to be a 3:30, but 3:40. You get that extra 10 minutes, whether you like it or not. I usually like it because you scramble and you're like, oh, they don't kick off till 3:40. So you don't have to be sitting there right at 3:30 unless you want to hear Brad Nessler and Gary D. Gary Almighty. I like both of these guys. These guys, I love how the game looks on CBS. I like Nessler and Danielson. I don't know too much about Jenny Dell, but she looks like she's going to do a fine job coming up on the sideline, to be honest. And Michigan is favored by 2.5 against Nebraska. That's where we're sitting right now. See if I got that little. I shouldn't put. I had the maize and blue there. You couldn't see the Nebraska. There it is. Now you can see it. So there it is. Before the season, I predicted that Michigan would lose their first 3 road games. And when it came time to pick the first game, I took Michigan against New Mexico to cover, and they didn't do that. But I picked Michigan. I picked them to struggle with a first-time quarterback against Oklahoma on the road. That happened. I didn't think they would cover against CMU, and they didn't. So that hasn't been great when it comes down to predictions. But predictions are funny because you make your predictions before the season, and it's why a lot of people just say, I predict Michigan's going to win them all. Because when the game week rolls around, it's not a lot of fun saying, well, I did before the season. I predicted them to lose, so I might as well just keep going with my preseason prediction. I don't know. You know what I'm getting at when it comes to that. But I'm ready to switch up my prediction. Although, I was looking. What I remember is last year Nebraska when they were playing Ohio State. They played physical, they played tough on defense, and they actually slammed the door on Ohio State's running game of Travion Henderson and Judkins, Quinshon Judkins, the Browns running back. And they held those guys to 64 yards altogether. Maybe somebody else ran the ball too. It was a very impressive display of defense. Nebraska led Ohio State in the fourth quarter last year. And this was at the Horseshoe. So does that mean everything where you go to this game, so that's going to be tough to run the ball? I think people are getting a little bit, and you got to look at something, right? You can't just look and say, this is my feel. This is what's going to happen. I looked at that game against Ohio State last year. And I know there's some different players, but if you look at the numbers so far this year, and Nebraska had to play Cincy at Arrowhead. That's their tough game. The other two games, I don't know, Texas Baptist or something. I don't know. Am I going to take something out of that game? But what you look at for those three games, you'd say you can run all over Nebraska, but you can't throw on them. And I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be that they're going to be way better against the run, and you're going to be able to throw at them. So I'm going completely against what the numbers say for these first three games. I think if you look at the first three games of the non-conference, and you fool yourself. I think that Michigan, even though they lost that game to Oklahoma, that's a benefit to them now that they have gone on the road in that kind of environment with their team. And yeah, they got it handed to them, but that experience is going to, I don't know, say if it pays off, but they're going to be more ready for this game with, having that test than what Nebraska has had with these, the relatively easy and whatever you want to say about Cincinnati. So you get a little bit of advantage there to Michigan after the three games, being more ready to play in this game than Nebraska. That's how I'm looking at it as I sit here right now. But I'm thinking that this is going to be a fourth quarter game. And so a fourth quarter game where it's going to be a one-score game. And I'm thinking that Underwood can make more plays than Raiola and company, even though it's on the road. And I'm leaning right now, make it official on Friday, in taking Michigan to win the game. It took me a long time to get there, but that's where I'm at right now. I'm leaning Michigan on this Wednesday as we get ready for the game coming up on Saturday. We'll take a few on the feedback, see what everybody's saying. If you have any questions or points, jump on in. Here's Hadley. Do I think Michigan is favored in the Nebraska game because of a better strength of schedule of who Michigan has played so far, even though it's a road game? I think that's a factor. I think the other factor is Bryce Underwood. That Bryce Underwood is, if I'm a bookmaker or if I'm a fan, if I'm anyone and somebody says, what do I look for in this game? Who's the best player? The best player is 19. And I know Raiola, he'd be like, you dirty mother, because, him and his dad, I got to believe he's a little bit like his dad. That's how his dad would talk. But Underwood has captured the imagination, of course, of Michigan fans. Does that matter when it comes down to the point spread? No, I think you look at this game as a complete toss-up, Hadley. And then you say, but the way Michigan, they have, as you put it, a stronger strength of schedule. They're more battle-tested. And Underwood really looks like he's growing after the non-conference. At where he was at the start, what you saw from him in New Mexico and Central, balanced in with what you saw him with Oklahoma. And it would be interesting if you could have 100 football coaches and say, all right, who do you want for this game? You got Raiola, who was a 5-star and started all last year, went through all of that experience, and he's at home, and this is it. Would you rather have that quarterback, or would you rather have Underwood, who's just had 3 games under his belt? He's 18 years old for just a couple weeks. Who do you take for this game and for the future? I feel like most people would take Underwood. That's not just because of what he can do with his legs, but the playmaking ability with the legs was, you knew that the athleticism was there. You saw it, and then it was against Central. I feel like when you watch these quarterbacks, when they get the ball and they make the decisions, not just split second, like instantaneously. The processing, what I feel from Underwood is that he gets the ball and it's almost like he takes everything in. And then he makes that decision so fast on whether to run, whether to throw, whether to move around. And he's gotten more and more comfortable with it. That's why I'm picking Michigan in this game. Cut from a different cloth said they had to keep the training wheels on some. If they had Underwood running all around in his first college game and he got hurt and ended out for some of the games of the rest of the season, they'd be furious. Well, I mean, you'd have to talk to people. I agreed with the approach. And for some of the reasons that you're saying, the part about worrying about getting a guy hurt, if Michigan put Underwood back on kick return, it'd be preposterous. Or, they wanted to play him at safety. I would be against that. But he's a dual threat quarterback. I was imagining, and not to talk all about the pros and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen that first Sunday, but what if the Bills had Josh Allen and said, Josh, we want you just throw the ball. Don't run. Go down. If you're going to run, just throw it. We want to keep you healthy. Lamar in that Buffalo game, he was doing both with his legs and his arms. And then against Cleveland last week, it was just all, Lamar like picks and chooses when he wants to do it. But it's such a big deal for Josh Allen. Part of Josh Allen's game is that he's just going to push guys over. He's going to take off. He's going to get an extra 10. If the offensive line caves in, guys are coming at him, he'll just get by two guys. Same thing with Lamar. So, yeah, I think it was understandable in his first college game. In addition, cut from a different cloth, they have had this thing for the last 4 years, this thing of they are the best running team in all of college football. Check the scoreboard. A natty, 3 Big Ten championships, physicality, stuffing it down Ohio State's throat. They had that going for them, and they had let's protect the 18-year-old first time around the road. That combination. So people that look at that combination and are like, no, they're stupid. It wasn't the stupidest thing. I don't know how people, when you lose, it was also part of 3rd and 7. Let's throw it 2 yards over horizontally. No. One time, if you're seeing something on a check down, but the horizontal passing was frustrating for people to watch. It was almost like Michigan was taking on a pro team or something. They had no chance the way they were approaching that game. Here's Trevor. He says he misses me on the radio. Yeah, at times, Trevor, I think about it over the years. Say, I wish I was. There have been some positives and negatives. I've been able to do some radio over the last few years here and there. Not as much as I would like. I like being on every day. But, yeah, there are times when I miss being on. Sam is saying it was the best offensive performance we've seen since JJ. Now it's true. And you say it's not saying a whole lot when you think about the orgy and Davis Warren and who was the other guy? Jack Tuttle experience. Tuttle for 3 series against Washington last year. He had a touchdown, a field goal, and a touchdown. I was like, what? He was running around. Woo! I thought, man. Then he had 2 3 and outs, a fumble and an interception, and it was over. I think we all think the same thing about Davis Warren. God bless the young man. And he got his victory against Ohio State. Great kid. But let's go. Thank you, Trevor. TB in the house. Good to see. So that's it. The only thing I have left is the prediction, which I'm thinking 21-17 or 20-17. One of those. I like to go put that exacta down, wait Friday. But right now, I have Michigan winning and covering by at least 3 points at Nebraska this weekend. The difference? Underwood. That's my analysis as I sit here right now. All right, I mentioned what I saw from the game on Saturday. I saw Dusty May. I was sitting there and I looked up at the Jumbotron, and there he was, smiling like he is in this picture that I've put up on the screen. And you'd say, wow, Dusty's really short. You know, he's about my height. You know, so you can say whatever you want. Yeah, he's short, but he's standing next to the newest Wolverine, a 6'10" power forward out of Boston, Massachusetts, Quinn Costello, 4-star. Now, QC, Costello, Quinn Quinn. Rivals likes him the best. They have him at number 28 overall, but when you smash ESPN and 24/7 together to get an industry rating, you have him as the 44th best player in the class of 2026. You add in the 6'10" Costello to the first player that they got for the 26 class, the 7'3" Danish big man, Marcus Moeller, and you've got quite a bit of size. I mean, that's, we're not reinventing the wheel or anything. We're just making observations. They got tall guys. The thing with Costello, and I have not watched 1 second of film. I was looking for some film today, and I should have just gone on YouTube and looked for it, but I was looking, and then I didn't come up with it, so I didn't come up with a comp, but I was reading about him, and apparently his game and what makes him the sought-after big man that he is that he's got a feathery touch, a spot up that he can just knock down. That's his number one. If you're looking to say, what makes him special, he's 6'10" and he can knock down jumpers. Sounds good to me. It sounds really good. To be, we'll see, the spot up 6'10" guy, drain a three. Is that like, what Will Cheddar brings to the table right now? I'm all right. If he's a Will Cheddar type player, that's okay. One thing about him, even though I say even though being a industry ranked number 44, if you look at the teams that also wanted him, Michigan State, never a bad thing to beat Tom Izzo for a player, Purdue, and North Carolina. So, yeah, that's the part that you look at and say, nice addition here for Dusty. And that is it where I sit. I think Michigan plays to their strength. They have made the switch, and they have, and it might be, I don't know if it's sad for people, or you could say, no, that's not happening. A switch in identity from the ground attack to handing it over to Underwood. I think this was going to be inevitable when you get a player of Underwood's ilk. But, change is tough for folks. I recall the Washington game in 2021 at the half. It was 10-0. And the text chain that I looked at was not, hey, Michigan's, shutting out the Huskies. Everything's great. Everybody was complaining. Why aren't they throwing the ball? This isn't going to work. If they don't come out passing the ball in the second half, the Harbaugh's an idiot. This isn't going to work against this is too close anyways against a crap Washington team. Well, they came out in the third quarter, went right down the field just running it. They got up 17-0, and then, they never looked back. But the conversation was in Northern Illinois. The next week, it's like Michigan, they got to open it up. They threw one down there, but it was still, they might be able to beat the lesser than teams. They might be able to compete in the Big Ten, but they're not going to be able to win the Big Ten and get to the college football playoff by having this approach. Well, I would say that not only was that the common narrative, it was almost a consensus narrative that Michigan was not in 2021 going to be able to ground and pound their way to the college football playoff. Yeah, and they did. And so now that, you say, well, you're leaving that behind. I don't think that they're going to want to leave that behind. But also, they tried it against Oklahoma, and they didn't have any luck, the exception of one time. And if they're, instead of that 75-yarder or whatever it was for Haynes, if you broke that into some chunks where it was like, here was a 10, here was a 15, here was a 5, there was another 10, there was another 25, it feels a little different. Feels a little bit different if they're more aggressive in that game. Feels a little bit more feels a little different if they're able to kick a field goal. Feels a little different if they don't get shut out at the half in that game. But I think it's good news. I think it was inevitable. And I think that Michigan and Sharon Moore were going to be reluctant and they were going to have to be taken, kicking and screaming into the Underwood era where they were just going to say, hey, it's your world. Oh, you weren't even in high school when I guess he was. You're barely in high school when they, started this run. And now we're just handing this program and the identity over to you. Bryce, take good care of it. Fans are like, but I think it's the right move. It's the good move. And I think people are going to be happy with the move. Sam likes Michigan pretty big on Saturday, 31-14. Like I said, 21-17, 20-17 is the area that I am in right now. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you over on the Maize and Blue Review, talking about this game coming up on Saturday, watching a little film of Costello, giving you a comp for the big man that Dusty was able to pull in over the weekend. You might say, who's next? Two names I got. Luca Foster, who was also in over the weekend. My binoculars down there looking. I was like, hey, a bunch of tall guys next to Dusty. I thought Luca Foster was Will Cheddar. That's when I made a note that I think I need to get my eyes checked because it's just I might need some to be able to spot through the binoculars. And then one other player, one guy's name that I saw today that I hadn't heard of. And then I was making a chart. And then can I find the chart? It's not a very good chart. A chart is only as good as where you can find it. There it is. Joseph Hartman, remember the name. 6'5" shooting guard out of Gainesville, Florida. Michigan in the mix there as well. And a big kid out of Finland. His name, I don't know. I haven't seen people say, oh yeah, he's got a list of like 8 teams, and Michigan is in the mix with him. But this Hartman is one that I just saw for the first time the shooting guard out of Gainesville that Michigan and Dusty. Oh, Gainesville. I mean, not so close to Boca, but when I see Sunshine State and I see recruits, and I'm thinking, Dusty and his gang crew with some Florida connections. I can see it. I see it happening. All right. Whoa. Andres getting into the last second saying, hello from the Philippines. Andres, are you playing in the in a golf open, I hope there? I don't know. I don't know much about the Philippines, how much golf is going on there. I hope you're having a great time. I also hope that if you're coming back for the game, you have safe travels, or if you're going to be there in the Philippines, I picture you sitting out at a resort. I don't know what time that game, 3:30 Eastern, would be kicking off in the Philippines, but I hope that it finds you in a great spot where you're going to be able to watch that game. There you go. All right. That will do it now. We'll see you over on the Den. Great time to jump on in and push that button and subscribe to the Maize and Blue Review. Go to On3 Rivals, and where it says Maize and Blue Review, just click it. Accept the challenge. I guarantee you'll love it. Everybody have a great day, and we'll talk with you on